Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for attending today's session. Just a couple of reminders. Please keep your microphones and your videos off during today's presentation. Also, if you have questions, please type them in the chat box and I will relay them to our presenter as we go along. And lastly, if you need a certificate of completion, please email Marilyn at the end of today's presentation and she will get that sent out to you. So with that, we have Michelle Erickson today. She's the Executive Director of the Abused Adult Resource Center. So I will turn it over to Michelle.
Thanks, Kylie. As Kylie said, I'm the Executive Director of the Abused Adult Resource Center, and we've been in the community here in the Bismarck-Mandan community for over 40 years. So I thought what I would do, because a lot of things have changed in the last few years, is go through kind of the Abused Adult Resource Center's services, the things that we offer to the community, and then I do have a little housing presentation afterwards. So hopefully I won't take up your whole hour, but we'll just see and ask questions whenever you want to. So our goal is to help our clients and families basically figure out how to live a life where they don't have abuse in it. We work a lot with our communities around awareness and sensitivity around the issues of domestic violence, sexual assault, also human trafficking, stalking, those interpersonal crimes all kind of are the areas that we work in. We do serve 7 counties. So we have Burley, Morton, the North Dakota side of Sioux County, Sheridan, Grand Kidder, and Emmons. We have 2 advocates that go to Sioux County 3 or 4 days a week. And then we have an advocate that takes care of the other surrounding rural counties. So quite a large service area. Just some of our milestones. Like I said, we've been around for over 40 years. We established some task forces in the 80s and 90s. We opened Seeds of Hope in 95. Pam's House is our emergency shelter, which we opened in 90. The Hope House, Diane Zainhofsky Hope House is our transitional shelter. We opened that in 2010. Bonnie's Apartments, which is permanent supportive housing, we opened in 11. And then Pulse is our community task force, which we kind of had on hold through COVID, but we're starting to get that going again. So first, to help people generally get involved with us is through kind of immediate crisis intervention. So they can do a few things. They can call our 24-hour hotline. They can walk into our office. They can call and schedule an appointment. Law enforcement often will refer people here or bring them here. We also have a online chat that people can access if they want to be more anonymous. So then we go through like an intake process. We find out where they're at, what their issues are, what they're looking to get help with, and sort of start creating a case plan around that. Whether it's just safety planning, maybe they're not planning on leaving, but they just want to know how to be safer when something happens. We work with that. If they want to leave, we work with that. If they just want to start applying for assistance so they're ready to leave, we'll help them do that. We also assist with the protection order process, which is part of the Century Code. So we are certified domestic violence advocates, and we can sit with them through the court process, help them make sure that it gets submitted the correct way. And we can't necessarily provide any legal assistance, but we're there to be supportive emotionally for them and help them understand how the whole process works. Pam's House, our emergency shelter, is, we have 38 beds there. So we kind of provide everything from food, hygiene supplies, kind of the basic needs that people have when they first come in, because they sometimes come to us with nothing. So we just want to get them set up so they feel comfortable while they're staying there. Again, we just kind of meet them where they're at, figure out what their goals are, and start working on those things so that they can hopefully work towards living on their own and being safe in their home. There's always a possibility of them moving to transitional housing if they're interested. We have some children's programs, so we want to make sure that when kids are in the shelter, they feel like they're doing all the normal things their friends are doing. So we want to make sure we get them to the pools and the zoo and all those kind of things. Will help figure out if kids want to go to camps. We can usually, get sponsors for that, or we do get a little funding for children's programming, so we use some of that. We help out with transportation, with some childcare, and then again, we provide opportunities for them to go to different community events as families as well, like the powwow and the carnival. I forget what they call it, but the carnival that was just here. We usually get tickets and things donated for those, so they get to still do those kind of activities. Our transitional shelter we've had, again, 2010 we opened, and that one has 25 beds. We shelter men, women, transgender, basically whoever needs that shelter. They can stay at transitional up to 2 years, and we work with them through those goals and, you know, figuring out what they want to do. Our goal is to get them on permanent housing at some point, if that's what they choose to do. Some people will leave and go live with their family, or maybe get an apartment with friends, something like that. But it's always about what they want to do. We don't force anyone to do anything. New Directions is our education and employment program. So that is offered at our transitional shelter, but any of our clients can participate in that. It's an individual based curriculum, and they go through a lot of different topics about interviewing skills, budgeting, works on their self-esteem. And then if they finish the entire curriculum, they can work at Seeds of Hope, which is our thrift store, and get some on-the-job training, so they have some experience to put down on their resumes. They also receive stipends for each part of the curriculum that they complete. So it gives them a little money if they need, you know, aren't ready to work or aren't making money any other way. Bonnie's Apartments is a 7-unit apartment building. They're efficiency apartments. And actually, up until June 1st, there were 7 units that were project-based vouchers through Burleigh County Housing. So they had to also be homeless and have a disability and be a single person because they're efficiencies. So there's not room for kids and significant others or anything else. So as of June 1st, we've been having a hard time filling those apartments. So as of June 1st, 4 of them are now project-based and 3 are full rent and don't have a voucher attached to them. So we charge $600 for the rent there, and we have taken away the limitation of a disability and being homeless. We still will rent them to our clients, but we wanted to make it a little more open for other possible tenants. The rural advocacy I mentioned, we have them advocates that go out to the rural counties. They've worked on task forces out there. They do a lot of community awareness. They do some presentations in the schools around healthy relationships. We've been working in those rural counties for probably 25, 30 years as well. Another big piece of our programming is sexual assault advocacy. So we have advocates available 24/7, both for domestic violence and sexual assault. But for sexual assaults, we are called out to the hospital usually, where we meet with a law enforcement officer and a forensic nurse. And we kind of do like a team interview so that the victim only has to tell their story once. And then we kind of walk them through the exams. A SANE exam, for those of you that don't know, is a sexual assault nurse examiner exam where they collect forensic evidence. And then we also will provide advocacy to the family members or friends that might be with them or later on have questions about how they can support that person. And then we just kind of provide whatever they need up to and through a court case if it ever goes to court, which most of them don't. And then we provide support during follow-up appointments and exams as well.
Michelle, we have a couple questions.
Sure. Okay.
Did you say you help them get funding for schooling if that's what they want?
For schooling, like college?
I'm not sure. She just said schooling.
Okay. Through the New Directions program, I'm guessing maybe. We will help with certain things if we have the money to. So we did get kind of a nice chunk of money last year from Basin Electric, they had a casual for a cause thing and were able to give us some money. So we're using that for things like CNA classes. If somebody maybe needs a laptop for college classes, we can't necessarily pay for an entire college course, but we'll try to help out with like books or a laptop, or you know, if they have class fees or something like that, then we can kind of help with that.
Okay, and then do they do they pay for utilities in the Bonnie's apartments?
They do not at this point. They do not. They're responsible for putting in their own cable and internet if they want that. They would pay for that, but the utilities, water, garbage, sewer, that's all covered by AARC. Anything else?
That is it for now.
Okay. So law enforcement advocacy, we work very closely with Bismarck, Mandan, Burley, and Morton. We get lethality assessments from Burley County and Bismarck PD. So we're able to kind of see what happened a little bit and then be able to call the victim in that situation and offer our services. We get police reports from Mandan and Morton on any domestics or sexual assaults. So then we can reach out and with them as well and offer our services. We go to regular meetings with law enforcement. We team train with them. So it's just better education for law enforcement, and then also for them to be better prepared to handle domestics when they're on scene. Human trafficking, we've probably been working with about 6 years, maybe. We pretty much handle any human trafficking victims over 24. YouthWorks generally handles the ones under that. And again, working closely with law enforcement, trying to figure out if they want to get out of the life, how do they want to get out of the life, where do they want to go? And then we're part of like the North Dakota Human Trafficking Task Force as well. So it's a little bit trickier working with trafficking. They're not always the ones on the front step saying, I want to be done with this. Kind of have to work a little closer with them about making sure that they feel safe to get out of that life and that they will be able to establish a new life wherever they decide to go. One of our new programs we added this year is SAVE. It's domestic violence offender treatment. Lutheran Social Services had that program up until last February when they closed their doors and just kind of left the domestic violence offender treatment programs hanging. So we decided to take that on. We started classes in January. I believe we've had about 14 or so through the classes. We have a men's class, which is the offender treatment class on Wednesdays. And we also have a class for women who use violence, which is generally in a different way. It's usually retaliatory or self-defense rather than just being violent. Most participants are court ordered to attend. The men's program is a 24-week program. They do pay for that. It's usually obviously part of their probation or whatever that they complete that. So, so far it's going pretty good. We were able to facilitate with contract with some facilitators that were at LSS. So they've had like 20 years of experience. So it was pretty seamless to transfer that over. But it did take about 6 months to get it up and running. So going well. Our Family Safety Center is our supervised visitation center. We provide parenting time and exchanges. We do use a sliding fee scale for people to pay. Usually a victim's fees are waived and then the offender pays a percentage based on their income, generally court ordered or ordered through a protection order or CPS or probation or something like that. So between Batters Treatment and Family Safety Center, those are the two programs that we actually charge for. We testify a lot in custody cases, or we'll write affidavits of what's happened at the visits. Our goal there is that we know that people might be not so great partners, but they are still parents. And as long as they can have healthy and safe visitation time with their kids, we're all for that. And that way it's documented. And so a lot of the times it's really helped the person that's been court ordered because they can still prove they can be a good parent while maybe just not being a good husband or wife. Let's see. Seeds of Hope is our thrift store on the corner of 6th and Main. We do quite a few things there for the community. We provide on-the-job training for our clients. We also have a career closet, so anyone in the community, doesn't have to be a client. If they need an outfit for an interview or first day of a new job, they can call us and we can have them go over there and they can pick out an outfit, new pair of shoes, whatever, so they feel a little more confident going to start their job or going to an interview. If our clients need clothing when they come to us, we'll take them down there and get that for them. Once they're moving out of the shelter into their own place or into one of our other housing programs, we'll help them furnish their homes with some furniture, some household supplies, things like that. So this year we did start a capital campaign this year to remodel the dock area. If anyone has donated there, it can be a little bit frustrating and difficult because the donation dock is in the alley and we often get really full really fast and then we can't take in any more. So we've had to close early for several years here. So we're trying to raise some money to remodel that dock area, make it bigger, improve the workspace and the efficiency, make it ergonomically correct for our staff and all of those things. So it's on our website if you have any further information or want any further information about that too. Some of our prevention efforts, Green Dot is probably the one that we've been using the most. It's a bystander intervention program. So it's designed to help the regular person figure out what they can do, no matter what kind of personality they have or, you know, how fearful they are of being involved in other people's stuff. It sort of teaches people how they can get involved to maybe stop some violence from happening. It's a really interactive training. It's kind of fun. So if anybody's interested in that for staff or someplace they work or a service group or anything like that, please reach out to us because we love to do those trainings. They're really fun. And then In Her Shoes is another program that we usually are doing in the rural schools. It kind of gives kids the options of picking different options. So, you know, like you get your paycheck and it's $100, but you have an $80 electric bill and you don't have any food. And so you got to kind of decide what your options are going to be and how you're going to make it through till next payday or whatever. So it's really been a good interactive training for like high school, middle school kids. Coaching Boys into Men, we haven't done a lot with recently, but it's basically a coaching program that, you know, is teaching boys about being respectful partners and treating people with respect. Safe dates is one we're looking at for the future. And then we do various school and community presentations when we're asked.
We do have a quick question.
Sure.
For men who take the 24-week course for abuse after the class, what percentage wind up still being an offender?
So we don't have enough backup to know that yet for our participants, but the the Grand Forks program has been doing it for a long time, and they follow those participants up to 2 years. And I don't know the exact percentage, but it's very low of the ones that actually recidivate and do something again. So it's a proven program out of Duluth that we all use. And so it's really about changing behaviors and, you know, helping them identify what they're doing and why they shouldn't be doing that. So I'm hoping that we'll be able to do something similar and follow them for 2 years after they complete the program. I think we've only had 2 graduates so far out of the 14. Another question, Kylie?
Nope, that's it.
So these are statistics from last year. It was interesting when COVID hit because we were hearing all this stuff about domestic violence is through the roof, the numbers are skyrocketing, and we had complete silence for probably a 2 full week period here. It was very little that the phone was ringing. And what we determined was that people were probably isolating and quarantining in their homes with whoever was being violent. And so they weren't able to reach out for help, or, you know, were too scared to do that. I do believe police reports definitely went up in that time, but we weren't seeing the outreach to us or being able to get a hold of people safely to offer the services. So So then in 2021, that was 2020 and 2021, it kind of stayed about the same. Numbers were pretty consistent. We had contact 21,000 times. We had almost over 1,000 new victims between domestic violence, sexual assault, and trafficking. We petitioned for 208 protection orders. We had almost 700 parenting times and exchanges, and sheltered 133 families with 97 children. I happened to run some statistics in April for the first quarter of this year. Our domestic violence and sexual assault numbers have tripled compared to the last 2 years in the first quarter. So we're definitely busier. And I think we've kind of referred to it as the shadow pandemic. Like, we feel like people are coming out of the shadows now and realizing that they can get help and that they don't have to depend on that person for whether it's jobs or money or transportation or childcare or whatever. So it's definitely been busier this year. Oops. Our funding, most of our funding, or I shouldn't say most of it, but over half of our funding is grants. And that's everything from city to federal. Our thrift store, Seeds of Hope, is about close to 30% of our income comes from that. So everything that's donated and sold there goes back into our programming. We get about 5% of our funding from United Way. About 9%, the other 10% comes from donations, fundraising, special events, and program fees, like the offender treatment and the visitation center. So my goal in expanding the thrift store is to hopefully be able to rely less on grants, because you just never know when those are going to end. You can get involved by volunteering, donating to the store, donating money, spreading the word, getting involved with our events. 2 events we have coming up is we have a golf tournament this year in August, Thursday, August 11th. And then we also have Spike Out Violence, which is one we've had for many years. I think we're at like 12 years maybe with Spike Out Violence. That's at the end of July. We did have a golf tournament years ago, and we got rid of it. Now we're going to give it a shot again. So if anybody's interested in either of those, they're both on our website as well. Okay, so here's my contact info, but I'll put it back up after we go through the other one. All right, let's see back here. Any other questions about the services at all?
There's the 2021 statistics are just for the counties you serve.
Correct.
Wow, that's high, but at least people are reaching out to a place that helps.
Yeah, there's 19 domestic violence programs in the state. Between Fargo, Minot, Grand Forks, and Bismarck, we probably carry the bulk of those numbers. But definitely the rural counties, the smaller programs in the rural areas, they are doing their work, and they're doing a lot of work because a lot of their, they have smaller staff. So they're doing, the person doing advocacy might also be writing grants or, those kind of things. So definitely the rural communities, and they know their people in those communities. So it's awesome that we have those littler programs for sure. Okay, so most of this is around domestic violence. There is some sexual assault pieces in there, but so this statistic is accurate. In the United States, 3 women are murdered by an intimate partner every day, which seems crazy, but it's true. And one of the most dangerous times for somebody is when they're actually leaving that relationship. So that's why it takes a lot for people to make that decision to leave, because they might have been told, if you leave me, I'll kill you. If you leave me, I'll kill myself. I mean, we've heard it all over here. So that's just a statistic that I wanted you to have in your head so that you understand. When I hear a lot of people saying things like, I don't know why she doesn't just leave him, or why does she stay with him? And, nobody's asking, like, why is he talking about killing her? Why does he beat her up? So just something to think about when you're seeing what looks like something, but you really don't know what they're all up against. Domestic violence is a pattern of assaulting and coercing behaviors, including physical, sexual, and psychological attacks, as well as economic coercion that adults or adolescents use against their intimate partner. We also see a lot of the economic coercion in older people in relationships in their 60s, 70s, 80s. We've had a lot of that in the last few years as well. This is not considered domestic violence, which is just loud arguments, hitting a table, maybe threatening somebody to leave and take the kids once or twice, or, having an affair. Those things don't in themselves constitute domestic violence, but if they're a pattern of that and it's happening on a regular basis, then that is what makes it domestic violence. Some of the risk factors for homicide in those situations are like the past threats to kill, past threats of suicide. These are some of the questions that we ask people when we talk to them. Do they have a gun? Have they had domestic violence with anyone else, or sexual violence? Have they stalked you or your ex or their exes? If there's substance abuse involved, if there's estrangement, some people get very focused on the person that left them and do some really strange things. We had a guy that she had blocked him on everything and changed all her passwords, but she forgot to change her Netflix password. And so he changed his password to a threat and basically said he was going to kill her through the Netflix password or message or however he sent it. So they're very creative as well.
We have a question.
Sure.
If you have the reason to believe that someone might be in danger, are you allowed to call the police and have them enter the unit?
I don't think they will enter the unit. You can definitely call, but you also don't necessarily want to make it more dangerous for that person. It's kind of a tough one. You can definitely call law enforcement and they'd probably come over and see if they can hear anything or knock on the door and see if people are okay. I don't think that they have the right to just barge in there unless they heard like somebody screaming for help or something like that. You can also, if you are questioning whether you should get involved or what you can do to get involved, you can always call here too and just ask an advocate, like if they have any ideas on how you could maybe get some information to that person or what you could do to get involved without putting them in more danger.
Can the police do a welfare check if you suspect this?
Yep. They'll do welfare checks. And we've called before on those where we'll be on the phone with somebody and we hear hollering and the phone drops and whatever, and we'll send police over. Obviously, we have a high level of confidentiality here, so you can't call and say, is Jane Doe one of your clients? We won't tell you that. But if we feel like somebody's life is in danger, then we're going to step over the confidentiality thing to make sure that somebody's okay. So these are just some national statistics. 1 in 4 women, 1 in 7 men have been victims of physical violence. Nearly 20 people per minute. These are a little older, so it's very possible they've changed. 20 people per minute are abused by an intimate partner. And between 21 and 60% of victims of violence, they lose their jobs due to reasons stemming from the abuse. Again, the age-old question of why does she stay there? There's a lot of reasons why someone stays in those situations. Whether it's they love that person, they don't feel like they have any options. They've been isolated from all their family and friends and nobody will help them, dependent on the finances, they have kids, all of those things. And I think, even one thing that's not listed in there, well, the lowered self-esteem is part of it, but there's a lot of gaslighting and emotional abuse that goes on. And sometimes you end up beating that other person down so much that they just can't form a thought about how they can make it on their own. So we go through all of those things when somebody comes in, because when you leave a relationship, any relationship, you kind of go through those same stages of grief as when you lose somebody to a death. And so we want to walk them through that and make sure that they're okay. If they need counseling, we'll try to get them into counseling. whatever they need is what we'll try to help them figure out. But there's so many reasons why they stay. And I think people don't always understand that there's a whole big picture behind that. This was a little bit older study, but 80%, a study of homeless women with children, 80% of them had previously experienced domestic violence. So homelessness is one of the biggest issues around domestic violence for women and kids. A lot of the times they get to the point where they're just leaving. They don't care what's going to happen. They just know that they're safer on the street than they would be staying with that person. And then 1 in 3 children who witnessed domestic violence were also child abuse victims. So we've seen some kids come into the shelter that have like serious behavior issues, but it's what they've known their whole life. And so they don't know that it's not okay to strangle your brother with the curtain cord. That was one that I saw and almost fell over. But yeah, we try to work with those kids and get them assessed into therapy or whatever, to just so that they don't grow up thinking that that's okay and how you handle a relationship. Some of the barriers that knowing that they leave sometimes with like the clothes on their back to either come to our shelter or go stay with friends or family. Some of the barriers they're facing when they're trying to find housing is either having limited or no income, poor rental history, poor credit history, maybe some prior convictions, unpaid bills from other places they've lived with damages, or maybe even issues with prior housing. So a lot of that is due to the offender. We know how manipulative people can be sometimes, and she might be the only one on the lease. He moves in, he ends up punching holes in the walls, or he's a felon, all of these things that they're kind of manipulated into. And then just having to like deal with those issues years down the road. I have a client I've worked with the entire 17 years I've been here, and she still owes $3,000 to housing for damages that were done by a prior offender that she hasn't been with for a very long time, but she's not going to be able to get housing until she works on paying that off. So even though they might leave and the rest of their life is going great, they might still be dealing with issues from prior relationships. So basically those barriers, they really kind of undermined efforts for them to get on their own, and also increases the risks to her and her children, and I say her and her children because that's the majority of our clients, but anybody that's trying to get into safe housing, if they can't and they remain homeless or in a shelter, it still increases risks around safety and other areas in their lives. 92% of homeless women have experienced severe physical or sexual abuse at some point in their lives. 38% of them victims become homeless at some point. And in 24 cities surveyed, and again, that's a little bit older, but 50% of domestic violence victims said that was a primary cause of them becoming homeless. A lot of people stay because they have nowhere else to go. A victim of domestic violence will often leave, we say 7 to 9 times is what the statistic is before she finally leaves for good, but then that also increases their risk at that point as well. Reasons why a victim would need affordable housing, they're better equipped to leave their abuser if you can afford housing. It would enable her to get out of a shelter faster or never have to go to a shelter at all. Stable housing is independent of her abuser, and it may enable her to get a job and have employment. We also have a few housing programs in the community. So we're able to help some of our clients maybe don't want to go in a shelter for whatever reason. A lot of the times that will happen when we have somebody who's maybe, has a visible job, they maybe have a good position and they don't necessarily want to go in a shelter and let everybody know that, they're a doctor or a lawyer or something. And so we can help them get into an apartment on their own, provide case management, and still help them figure out what they need to do. whether it's, apply for a protection order or whatever. So we do have a couple of those programs. And I think overall we have around 40 or 50 people in either our shelters, our apartment, or in apartments in the community at any given time. So we have quite an extensive housing program. As far as a landlord goes, if a tenant's requesting locks being changed due to a safety concern, it's probably important to get that done as quick as possible. Not saying you should have to do it at no cost, but if you can work with them or, let them make you some payments or however it works, that's something to keep in mind. It's also in your best interest because then hopefully that person won't be coming in. Making sure the property is well lit. If you have a security building, making sure that those security doors are always shutting like they're supposed to. If we encourage anybody that we work with that has a protection order to make sure their landlord knows about that and that they will help enforce them. If you know about it and you see that person coming on the property, even if say she's standing outside talking to him, he's on the property, there's a protection order, that's a violation. So you shouldn't feel bad about calling because you would be basically helping enforce that order and taking care of your properties. And then not putting like victims' addresses in any like apartment newsletters or giving out information about those people that maybe have a protection order or, have had prior issues with violence. Sorry. Okay. Completing repairs in a timely manner, even if it's like not their fault, like maybe the window's just broken, making sure that gets done quickly so that there's no safety issues as far as somebody getting in their house or anything like that. If you work with a tenant to make payments on a security deposit or reduce the deposit amount, that's helpful. And then just understanding that domestic violence itself is not a lease violation. If somebody is on federally assisted housing, you cannot evict them because of the domestic violence. You shouldn't anyways, but that's the Violence Against Women Act. In 2005, they put in the Violence Against Women Act, which provided that protection for victims. And it was reauthorized again this year. And I think that starts again in October. And it basically protects them from being evicted because of the violence, but it applies to tenants that live in federally funded public housing or use federally funded housing vouchers. So just be aware of that piece of it. This is just the issue around protection orders. It's Rule 34. It allows us to help, like I talked about. It's not always important. It's not always the right thing to say, go get a protection order, because really we talk through that with people. If somebody's not afraid of getting in trouble and they have a long criminal history, they're not going to care that there's a piece of paper that says they need to stay away. And so sometimes it's not the safest thing for somebody to do. If anything, if you know there's somebody in a situation, refer them to us. We will do all the talking. And then, just realize that it's an option. There's actually two different kinds of orders. So there's a domestic violence protection order and there's a disorderly conduct restraining order. The disorderly conduct restraining order, we can't apply for. However, somebody can just go apply for that on their own. And that's basically harassing or bothering behavior. So it really could be a random stranger walking by your house every day and flipping you off. That could qualify for a restraining order, where a domestic violence protection order has to have either evidence of an actual assault or a threat on somebody's life, or something that's a little bit more serious, I guess, in order for them to apply for a protection order. Stalking generally doesn't qualify. Most of our judges won't sign on just a stalking order. But we can then have them try for a restraining order. Yeah, one of the other main differences is that domestic violence protection orders, any violation, the first violation if convicted is a misdemeanor. Any further ones would be felonies. So it does rise a little in the level of a conviction, where restraining orders always are misdemeanors. So our goal is always to develop a network of supportive services for people. So whether it's, just kind of wrapping services around people is what we say, and, getting them into counseling or getting them on housing or working with the landlord. We have a couple of really good housing advocates here, and they have worked some miracles around housing with people. So landlords can reach out to us anytime too, and just say, like, what should I do in this situation? Or, if you're just not sure, and we appreciate that. So we're all obviously responsible to end violence in our community. At least that's how I feel about it. And, the things you can do are, don't make excuses for violence, report violence that you witnessed. If you hear people making really bad sexist jokes and speaking up, intervene when you feel like you are safe to do that. Refer people to anger management or batters treatment programs, if you're comfortable doing that. I think there's things we can all do in the community to help, stop some of that violence that goes on. If you do think somebody is a victim or you witness something, don't ignore those. I think we all have been in a situation where we get kind of an icky feeling about something, and, don't ignore that. See what you can possibly help with. Obviously, you don't want to approach that person while they're with their offending partner and say, hey, you should go get some help and get away from this person, because that generally doesn't go well. But, offer your assistance if you catch them out taking the garbage out and you're just like, hey, I noticed that you seemed uncomfortable around him. There is places that can help you, things like that. Listen to their needs. Don't just assume they're crazy or they don't know what they're talking about or they're making things up. Like, just listen and see if there's anything you can help them with. Believe them, don't judge, and then again, encourage them to get some help. And then just as a community member, don't look the other way. We should be talking about it. When I became the director 3 years ago, I wanted to really sort of blast the community with our information. And so we have billboards and we put up posters, and people should know. It shouldn't be a secret that they can get help, and people should know where to send people. So I think that's been a good thing for us. Support any laws or legislation around, domestic violence laws, around safe housing laws, those kind of things. Again, be a role model, speak out, get involved, all of those things. Violence is a learned behavior. It can be unlearned. And I think that's why we like the Green Dot program a lot. Just teaching people different ways to handle things. So there you go. And I can go put up the other one where my contact information is. Oh, so you can get a hold of us in different ways. Our office is at 218 West Broadway in Bismarck. We're just a couple blocks from the Dairy Queen too in the summertime, or a couple of houses away. We have our website, Facebook. People reach out to us through Facebook, email, Instagram. We have our crisis line, which is 24 hours, live chat, which is available Monday through Thursday. So yeah, any way you can reach out to us, please do.
All right, we have some questions. If we need help for a new laptop for school, like a better one, can you guys help with that?
You have to call us and come in and meet with someone is what we would need to do. Probably would need to participate in New Directions unless they already have a job or are going to school. But it's definitely something we can try and work out or talk about.
Okay. Here's kind of a long one. How can a person support a friend who is leaving or have left in an extremely abusive relationship? They know he's no good and no good for them. What can you say to encourage them to stay away? I have said Krista, you know he is going to kill you. If you get back together with him, he will murder you. It will happen, and that is going to destroy your children. All now are teens and young adults. He is going to murder you, and he will. I don't think that is likely the best approach, and pointing out reasons why he is a POS gives her reason to defend him, and that's not ideal by any means. I know ideally she'd be in support, in a support group. She does go to a therapist. She's been involved with the shelter here. Dana is wonderful. Dana is wonderful. But when this happens out of the blue, when we are driving somewhere or taking the dogs for a walk, just random. I'm not trying to be a therapist, but what is the right thing to say in these cases?
I don't know that I can say what the right thing to say is. I think there was some good points there. I think you just have to make it a safe place for her to be able to talk to you and not a judgmental space. Like if she thinks you're just going to keep throwing at her, he's going to kill you, he's going to kill you, she'll stop talking to you at some point. Sometimes she just might want you to just listen. And then, you can always refer to us as well. You can say, I can get somebody on the phone right now. It doesn't matter what time of the day, what time of the night, what day it is. You can get someone on the phone right now if you want to talk to somebody about your options, or, have the information available so you can say, here's the number if you want to call, or if you're willing to call. We don't force anybody to do anything. I mean, we've had people go back to those relationships 100 times, and hopefully they just learn something new every time they talk with us. But we could at least safety plan with her, or whatever. But from your perspective, I think it's just to listen, to believe what she's saying. And I mean, I will bring up the kids a lot, because do you want your kids to think that this is how their boyfriends or girlfriends should treat them? Or do you want them to grow up and have healthy relationships? I mean, a little teeny bit of guilt is probably okay. But, just looking at the future, what does your future look like if you leave him? Like, where do you need help? What do you need help with? So I think just maybe talking about the options and just being a safe place for her to speak is the best you can do.
The next one. I have a tenant with a restraining order on another tenant. Said tenant took the first tenant's 5-year-old child to the park without permission. Is this also considered a DC restraining order violation?
Well, do you know if the child is listed on that order? Or if there's anything on the order about the child? Because if not, it probably wouldn't be a violation. It kind of depends on what the judge would say. But in general, if that child isn't listed, probably not a violation. No, just the mother, but the child's only 5. Right. But you can still add your kids, just so you know that. Just the mother. Yeah, it's probably not a violation. However, she could go back in if she's worried about that. She could go and ask for an amendment to add the child on there too, because she doesn't feel that child would be safe with whoever is the person. That is it just a person, or is it like a ex partner or something? Person. Okay. So yeah, if she feels like, yeah, that seems weird that he would just take her kid and go somewhere, a little creepy. I would probably try to do an amendment and add my child to the order as well.
Is a trespassing order the highest that a landlord can do, or can they do a restraining order?
Okay, well, I just know this from our experience. I tried to get the restraining order as AARC against someone, and they would not let me do it as AARC. So I don't know that you could do it if you don't live on that property. It's worth trying. I know that as a individual, if you felt that person was a threat to you, you could definitely get one. But I don't know if you can get a restraining order for like the property. I don't think so. If that trespass order continues to be violated, maybe. It kind of, there's no like concrete this qualifies, this doesn't. It kind of is up to the judge and what the surrounding circumstances are. But it's, I mean, it's worth a shot. I guess they would tell you if you couldn't do it.
Just a couple comments. The judges need to watch a week of IDTV. Most serial killers, rapists stalk first.
Yeah, I watched it. I'm also into true crime, but I watched a whole entire series of documentaries called The Worst Roommate Ever. And it was, oh gosh, like how you get hoarders and how you get stalkers and all this other thing out. It's not easy. I know I was working with somebody a couple weeks ago that just a friend of hers lived there. He's punched a hole in her wall. She wants him out, but we called PD and said if we change the locks, if he breaks in, would he be arrested for vandalizing? And they said no, because even though he's not on the lease, he's technically established residency, and therefore he would just be breaking into his own place. So it wouldn't be a offense, which seems messed up. But that leaves her with only an option of either the landlord doing a criminal trespass or her getting a restraining order. So keep that in mind, I guess.
If you have not experienced domestic violence, you can't understand what it does to you psychologically.
True, very true. I speak at Heartview a couple times a month, and most of them that are in treatment have also had some experiences around domestic violence or sexual assault. And most of them will agree that the psychological abuse is worse sometimes than getting punched or slapped or hit, because those things kind of fade from your memory, but the things that people say to you day in, day out really stick. So there's a lot of trauma that goes along with being in even an emotionally abusive relationship, and a lot of therapy that has to happen after that.
For donations, is it best to just take everything to Seeds, or do you take donations directly at the houses too?
We don't take them directly at the houses. If you have anything that you're questioning, like if you think you have something that like sometimes people will call me and say, I have all this brand new set of dishes, could you use them at the shelter? And I'll say yes, and then they'll bring them to the office. But all of our clothing goes to Seeds of Hope. We just don't have storage room at the shelters or here at the office. But if there's something particular for the shelters that you would like, someone donated a 9-foot decorated Christmas tree a couple of years ago, and we said, yes, we'll take it at the shelter. So if you have questions, just call or reach out to me. Probably me, because I say yes to everything. But my front desk doesn't love me some days. But yeah, just give me a call or email me or something, and we'll work it out.
If the guy putting holes in the wall is not on the lease, I would venture to say get the landlord involved. Since he is not on the lease, the landlord can get him out.
Right. Yep. And that was the other path we went down. Yeah. About trying to get him evicted. And it worked out that he ended up leaving, but yeah, it was kind of like, what are our options at the time? So yeah, definitely.
Is the person having the guy punching holes on housing? He can't be there if she is on housing.
Nope, she isn't. She's actually in a contract for deed, to be honest. She's buying the place, but yeah, no, she's not on housing.
All right, well, I think that seems to be all the, oh, just kidding. We see a lot of established residency issued in Grand Forks and are currently working with law enforcement and our CCR teams to fix this, as sometimes clients are being told if the person has been there for a certain amount of time, they are now a resident, which isn't true.
That's what they say here. If he's been there over 30 days or he's getting mail there, then he's a resident. So yeah, definitely becomes an issue, especially in domestic violence type situations, but in general. That's good to know, though. That might be something that we will bring up with our task force now. And if anybody wants, a few years ago we did, thank you, Christy. A few years ago we did some really intense landlord work with Bismarck PD, with Clint Fuller, and they had posters in the inside of every part where you're putting them up in apartment buildings about domestic violence and where to call for help. I'd be willing to do up something like that again if anyone needs that. Also, if you need any brochures, just contact us. If you have like an office space where people come in to do their leases and stuff, and you have a place for some brochures, let me know. We can send some or drop some off or whatever. So.
All right. Well, I think that is everything. Thank you again, Michelle, for presenting today and taking time out of your busy schedule. And thank you all for attending. Again, if you need a certificate for participation, please email Marilyn and she will get that sent out to you. Our last session of this series is next week. We have Julie with Step Wellness speaking on coping with stress. So hopefully you all can join us next week. Again, thank you again for attending today, and thank you, Michelle, and hope you all have a good rest of the day.